Happy Black and Gold Friday, everyone. I'm Jack Allante. It's also the first Friday after Labor Day, which means society tells us we can't wear seersucker anymore. So as I take some layers off, let's look at some layers of the Saints coaching staff and start with Ryan Nielsen. It's his sixth season with the Saints, his second as assistant head coach, but his first alongside Dennis Allen as co-defensive coordinator.
Stay later now as a result, waiting on DA.
No comment. No comment. The thing with the mobile quarterback, the guys that are running a little bit, is just something else you have to prepare for. And in this league, there's some guys that run a lot and some guys that don't. And so each week is just a challenge. And this challenge this week is different than Matt Ryan, where he didn't run as much, but he still could. And so we know who we're playing. We know what he's done in the past. He can run. He's a really good runner. And so we've just got to be able to control the pocket, eliminate the lanes, keep them in the pocket, and collapse it around them so it doesn't get out, or up the middle or around the edge.
What's up, sports fans? I'm Jack Allante. This is Talk a Lot, where we talk a lot of sports. And while I would consider myself dialed in on the Saints, I'm not even close to being locked in and locked on the Saints. But this man, Ross Jackson, joins the show today. We're going to talk a little Ryan Nielsen and expand on this idea. Welcome to the show, Ross. How are you, my friend?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. That might be one of my favorite introductions I've ever gotten before. I appreciate that, man.
Absolutely. So Ross and I hit it off at training camp our first time, and I think the best buds, right?
Oh, yeah.
And hung out at Wrong Iron a little bit. Shout out Wrong Iron. But Ross is in Atlanta. He'll be covering the game. He obviously is the host of Locked On Saints podcast and also a contributing writer to Saints Wire, USA Today, and also CrescentCitySports.com. Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints. You can find him at Ross Jackson NOLA. Ryan Nielsen, let me just put it this way, and then I'm going to give you the floor, my friend, because we want this to be brief. Any questions or comments, throw them in right now, and we're only going to be on for about 15 minutes, and then obviously Ross and I will follow up after the game tomorrow. The craziest thing about this is that it's 11:45 a.m. Saturday, September 10th, which means we're pretty much 24 hours away from kickoff, and that if that doesn't get you going, I don't know what will. But Ross, if there was like a world where if you really liked, if media personnel and NFL football coaches were best friends based on how much the media personnel really likes that coach, I think Ross Jackson and Ryan Nielsen would be best friends hanging out on the reg. So after you hear him talk about Marcus Mariota, Ryan Nielsen, the co-defensive coordinator, the assistant head coach, and the guy in charge of the defensive line, who's a big fan of Kentavious Street, they're so used to playing the Falcons with Matt Ryan. How does that change with Mariota?
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Mariota does something unique that Matt Ryan couldn't do, which was force you to play 11-on-11 football. And I know that that's a cliche that we hear a lot when it comes to mobile quarterbacks, but, cliches are usually cliches because we say them all the time because they're true. And so when you have a mobile quarterback that, takes you to this opportunity to where you have to dedicate, either a spy on Marcus Mariota or make sure that you're dedicating contain on the outside so that you're not over pressuring the quarterback. That's a big part of what you are forced to do with Marcus Mariota under center or behind center, however you want to look at it. And so, the things that you have to adjust are things like your pass rushers in terms of what it is that they're pursuing. They're not over pursuing, trying to get after the quarterback in the pocket. They're sort of, watching the contain over on the outside to make sure that that quarterback can't get to one sideline or the other sideline, which means a guy like Kentavious Street, who Ryan Nielsen talked about his explosiveness, talked about how good he is as a pass rusher, getting that interior push along with David Onyemata and some of the others that you're going to see mixed into the middle, including Shai Tuttle has been around for a while. That interior push by the defensive line becomes such an important piece of how you limit a mobile quarterback, because just as much as you don't want him escaping to the outside, you also don't want to hold the contain over on the outside and then give him an A or a B gap that he can then push out of through the offensive line and then run right up the middle. Now, keeping him congested in the middle is better than allowing him to get to the outside, but even still, it takes play from the entirety of the defensive line. To the second level, you have, very, very good linebackers in terms of their ability to go sideline to sideline. And that's what you're going to need in this matchup as well. Demario Davis, Pete Werner, guys that are very good pressure players up the middle. They're also very good coverage players that can kind of go, do that sideline to sideline work that you need them to do with a mobile quarterback. And then the kind of last level of it is how you utilize safeties like Marcus May, as well as Tyrann Mathieu, who can come up and play closer to the line of scrimmage, who can play in the box, who can maybe play a little bit of a robber role, which brings them down to the middle of the field, gives them an opportunity to be able to crash down and be aggressive in the run game, whether it be a quarterback run or a traditional run with a halfback, gives them the opportunity to do that. And then the last thing would be a spy, right? The way that you sort of look at a Pete Werner or a Demario Davis that's watching the quarterback like you usually would in zone coverage, but
do you think gets that
also
spy?
Watching to see where they go. I think that it varies, play by play, depending upon where Kyle Pitts is lined up. For instance, maybe he draws coverage from one of those linebackers, and that might kind of shift the responsibility another way. I think Pete Werner is probably one of your better downhill players on this defense, but is his groin injury sufficient enough even to this point that maybe they keep that with Demario Davis, who of course has the mentals for it.
Roster, tell me if you could how we stop Kyle Pitts and Cordarrelle Patterson, because I think it's like obvious that those are the two guys that are going to touch the ball the most for the Atlanta Falcons, with Paulson Adebo being out per the injury report yesterday. Can you give us an update on Tyrann Mathieu and what we heard from Dennis Allen, but particularly with Pitts and Patterson, which is really fun to say 5 times fast, Pitts and Patterson. With Pitts and Patterson, can Tyrann Mathieu wrap up Kyle Pitts in open field? That is a large man. That is a large man and a small man, but he's still the honey badger.
That's the thing, is like, you're not going to catch me doubting Tyrann Mathieu and his ability to take down any player, right? We watched him, right, Jack, like have that big interception in the back of the end zone when he was matched up on Juwan Johnson, who's nearly, he's 3 inches shy of a foot taller than Tyrann Mathieu. And, we watched him out battle Juwan Johnson for a pass in the back of the end zone where things are most congested. And so, I think that you have a lot of players that are going to be able to contribute to the coverage of Kyle Pitts. But I think that one of the big things that if Kyle Pitts goes off and he has a big day, that's fine, as long as you're limiting the other players on the offense. You're not allowing a Tyler Algier or one of these running backs to establish the run game. And then same thing with Cordarrelle Patterson. If he has, a better day, let him have a better day in the passing game. Don't allow him to get going in the run game. 164-yard catch down the field last year ended up putting the Falcons in position to, kick the game-winning field goal with Younghoe Koo in their first matchup. So, when these big plays happen and when these moments take place, when the time, timing matters for sure. But for the most part, if you can limit the run game and force Marcus Mariota and these players to go to the air, yes, they're talented pass catchers, but there's a big difference between Matt Ryan throwing you the ball and Marcus Mariota throwing you the ball as well. So if they can limit all of that, if they can keep Marcus Mariota uncomfortable and sort of keep him hesitating, then the secondary, which is well equipped to be able to exploit mistakes, should be able to exploit more mistakes over on the defensive side than the offense is going to give up over on the offensive side for the Saints.
At Ross Jackson Nola is how you can follow this guy. You can also go to Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, and go to Locked On Saints, obviously the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. He's Ross Jackson Nola. He's your credentialed media member. He's also going to give you a couple topics at the start of his show, and then he's going to say all that and a little bit of lanyap on this episode of Locked On Saints. Can we just hear you say that real quick? Can you just give us an example of what we're going to hear today?
Yeah, let's see. Let's say the Saints win this game on the backs of Alvin Kamara and their defense, right?
And let's say wait. And let's say the final score of the game is Saints 28, Falcons 3.
Oh, okay. Well, then in that case, the cold open is not going to include anything other than the Saints did it. They won 28-3. Can you believe it? It actually happened. We got all of that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints. I'm not even going to mess with anything else outside of the fact that they won by 20.
Right. I mean, if that happens,
like that's the story right there.
The title of
I might even just say, I might even just legitimately jump on and say 28-3. All that and a little bit of lanyard for you. Like I might not
Right.
even mess with it.
Well, right. I was about to say from the writing perspective, like I wrote an article for the Destrehan football game. They beat John Ehret 40 for NOLA.com, which was cool. And 42-6. I mean, like I almost feel like a really creative, but in the same way, non-creative title would just be 42-6. It's like, dude, if the Saints beat the Falcons 28-3, or if it's 28-3 at any point in the game, like, I mean, news writers just make the title of the article 28-3.
Yeah. The New Orleans Saints did not blow a 25-point lead in the season opener against the Atlanta Falcons. Like it writes itself.
Exactly. All right. So to close out, we got about 5 to 6 more minutes with Ross Jackson here of Locked On Saints. What is your big headline when it comes to, and I want to talk a little bit about Alvin Kamara and all the offensive weapons as kind of the last positive thought. But if there's anything not so positive about this, what's your headline when it comes to Paulson Adebo being the MVP of the training camp, the offseason, the OTAs, and not being able to play game one? How unfortunate that is, but also this, Tyrann Mathieu illness. Is that going to be fine? What do you expect? What would your assumption be? And things like that going into game one.
Yeah, on the Tyrann Mathieu front, under normal circumstances, I'd probably guess that things would be fine. But in today's realm, when you see the word illness, it can mean any number of things at this point, it feels like. So it's a little bit harder to speculate around that. So we'll have to wait and see on that part. But when it comes to Paulson Adebo, it's unfortunate, right? He had, like you mentioned, he had such a great camp. He had a really solid preseason and the reps that he got to take. But then, now he's not going to be able to appear in the first game. Now, the Saints are uniquely equipped to deal with even not having both of those players, if that were to happen going into this game, because of the depth that they have in the secondary as a whole, whether it be at safety or at defensive back. They can move Bradley Roby to the outside, which is what they traded for him to do. They acquired him last year, I believe it was September 8th last year, to basically have him in the running as a starting candidate opposite Marshall Lattimore. He had one more game of the 6-game PED suspension that kind of straddled from the year before, left to serve. Paulson Adebo started week one and then, had a great game where he had 3 total tackles, a pass defense, and an interception, including in that interception, of course, being in the red zone against a marching, reigning MVP, Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. So, he just simply never relinquished that. Ended with 3 interceptions, a handful of pass breakups, and then 66 tackles on the season. So it stinks to not see him be able to jump right into his second year where he was expected to take another step forward. People saying that he was Marshawn-like in terms of his ability as a corner. And we certainly saw, the glimpses of that all throughout camp. And so now he's, hopefully it's a week and then he's able to get back out there week 2. But the Saints are uniquely positioned to deal with this. They can bounce Bradley Roby back to the outside. They can utilize PJ Williams in the slot, who's revitalized his career before in the slot before revitalizing it a second time as a safety. And then he can also play a safety role. They have Justin Evans, who they brought in over the course of this offseason. JT Gray is somebody that can also slide in. So the Saints have a lot of opportunity here. They have a lot of players that can play in a lot of different places, and they have unique depth in the secondary. So they should be okay, even if they're without both of those guys. And this is certainly the offense to miss them against the Atlanta Falcons, but you just hope that it doesn't go beyond this week.
Look, Dennis Allen is one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. And the reason that we have all this talent on the defense is so that we can deal with these outside factors, like the unpredictable situation that is Marcus May, like the unpredictable situation that is Paulson Adebo. Saints fans, I would not worry about that security blanket that we have on defense. We'll see what happens, but don't worry about inadequate security on the defensive side. And with that being said, Ross Jackson is brought to you by Bear Law LLC, who is the #1 leading law firm for, you guessed it, inadequate security.
At Bear Law LLC, we have the privilege of representing victims and survivors that are oftentimes involved in catastrophic incidents that affect their lives.
If anyone looking for a personal and loving relationship with law, I would choose Bear Law.
At Bear Law, our goal is to turn victims into victors.
It's 11:56 a.m. We got 3 more minutes with Ross Jackson and 3 more minutes until 24 hours away from Saints kickoff. Saints at Falcons, September 11th in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Obviously, we're the Caesars Superdome. They're the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Ross, I don't know if this will be your first time or your second time in the stadium, but thoughts on that atmosphere, and will the Falcon fan base come even close to a loud, storming Saints fan base in the Superdome?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think that the Saints fans are gonna. I'm just gonna say rival the Atlanta Falcons fans, right? I don't feel like there's a lot of Atlanta Falcons excitement around the city, walking around and everything. There's just not that. But I've seen a lot of Saints fans flew here with a lot of Saints fans as well, and so I'm not going to be surprised to, at least from a decimal meter level, the New Orleans Saints fans to outweigh the Atlanta Falcons fans in that stadium. But I am looking forward to being there. It will be my first time there. And it'll be my first time in that press box as well.
It's a beautiful stadium. It really is.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm not going to be, looking forward to seeing, although kind of looking forward to seeing all of those empty red seats. But, you want to see all these stadiums around the NFL completely packed and everything, especially after, a year, a couple years removed from having no fans in the stands at all. So, you prefer to see places packed, whether it be the away team or the home team that's packing it is totally fine. But, you'd like to see it. But it's a beautiful, state-of-the-art stadium. Kind of looks like a takeout container from the outside, but from the inside, I mean, it's much better.
A takeout container. Sorry, I got something moving back here. Y'all, it's quarter 2. Just started, second quarter, Alabama, Texas. It's a tie football game, and my picks for college football today did include Alabama -20. I think the line actually changed to -21. But as we know, Alabama has a way of scoring 5 touchdowns in a span of 10 minutes. So anything can happen, but hey, I'm sure Arch Manning's watching this game. I also had UNC -7, Duke +10, and UL, the Ragin' Cajuns, covering just a win, a money line bet. If you have any final thoughts, let us know. We're closing out here with Ross. Ross, I'm just going to give you the floor for the last minute. If it's high school football, if it's college football, if it's any other NFL team that you're watching, just give us kind of a thought away from Saints, because I feel like you're so locked in and locked on Saints that you don't even have time to express your opinions or what you like to watch outside of covering the Saints. So I just want to give you the floor to talk about anything but the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those guys to where when I step away from work, I really, really step away from work. And so for me, probably the next kind of highlight is the fact that I went to the Georgia Aquarium yesterday.
Right. Okay.
So that was really the thing, right? The whale sharks are beautiful. I mean, the environment's beautiful, all of that. But I think, when it comes to something outside of the New Orleans Saints, I'm really interested to see how Lamar Jackson performs this coming weekend, tomorrow, up against the New York Jets. I mean, he's kind of in that situation where that deadline has passed, no contract extension, all of that. He has an opportunity here to potentially make himself tens of millions of dollars by, playing extremely well this season, maybe leading that Baltimore Ravens team. Even just the playoffs would make all the difference for him. He represents himself in the midst of all this as well. And then so him going up against the New York Jets defense to open up, which was bottom of the NFL last year in EPA per play in terms of defense, allowing the most success on a per play basis, taking into consideration things like down, distance, game situation, stuff like that. He gets to open up his year of potentially making a ton of money against that defense. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Lamar Jackson puts together tomorrow.
One of my buddies drafts Lamar Jackson every year on his fantasy team, and he's an Alabama guy, and we give him some shit. We give him some shit about how do I say this kindly? About making a couple B's and C's in college when a lot of us tried our best to make A's. So he's actually a really smart guy, but he's not the sharpest tool out of everyone's shed. So he drafted Lamar Jackson, and he gave his fantasy football team name the name Making Me Money Jackson. And this was before the whole Lamar's trying to get his money. He's trying to get paid before the deadline.
Right.
But now it kind of makes sense. Like Lamar is trying to make himself. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying. But Lamar Jackson is one of the most exciting quarterbacks in football to
100%.
watch. And so that's cool that you kind of keep an eye on him. To close out, can you answer this question for Ryan McGee?
Yeah.
Has Allante Taylor been practicing this week, or is he still hurt?
He has been practicing. I don't know how much you're going to see him in the first game, which really just kind of comes down to numbers more than it comes down to health. But expect to see him on the field potentially if the Saints go to a dime package in certain passing situations. So that would mean 6 defensive backs on the field, maybe only 1 linebacker and 4 defensive linemen, or 3 defensive linemen and 2 linebackers is usually the way the Saints usually mix up a dime package. And so that would be the opportunity to really get to see him. But Ryan Nielsen did answer a question about Allante Taylor yesterday. And one of the things that he mentioned was that he's not sure if you're going to really see him in the slot early on in the year, but you will see him this year. It was kind of the phrase that he mentioned. So there's a lot of confidence around him. He was noted as public enemy number 1 by wide receiver coach Cody Burns, who spent a year with him over in Tennessee on the opposite side of the ball, now coaching the players that go up against him in one-on-ones on practice. So there's a lot of confidence around the kid. Just need to kind of wait to see how he gets deployed as the numbers shake out, and of course, as he gets more familiar with the team after having to miss some time throughout training camp.
Yeah, and Ryan, I agree. I hope Bradley Roby can ball out in that slot corner position and play well against the Packers and wherever he goes. If he's in the slot corner, either way, we're going to need Bradley Roby to definitely step up. And Allante Taylor with any opportunity that he gets against the Falcons 24 hours from right now. Ross, thank you so much, my friend. I'm going to let you go, and I want to remind everybody that Ross and this episode of Talk a Lotta is presented by Helm Paint. More than 50 years in the paint industry, more than 50 years of steering people in the right direction. Call 504-861-8179. Again, that's 861-8179. You see that logo right there? It's Helm Paint and Decorating. And go visit your nearby Helm Paint store. There's 7 locations in the metro area. Ross, safe travels coming back from Atlanta, and I hope you're coming back from Atlanta with a 28-3 or some version of a 25-point victory, Saints over Falcons. Stay locked in, stay locked on, and follow Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Noel on Twitter. I'm Jack Collada at Talk Collada. This is Talk Collada, where we talk a lot of sports, and we are signing out. Peace and love. Thanks, Ross.